I'm ready when you're ready. This is a short episode, too.
I love a short episode.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to the studio, Earlonne, to listen to this short episode.
It's good to be back.
We're pulling another one out of the archives,
Yes.
One that we wanted to revisit and wanted listeners to either hear for the first time or return to and consider again, because we feel like this one, people may forget about this one.
This is a classic. This is a true ear-hustled episode.
And what are we listening to?
We are listening to Getting a Date. And Getting a Date was our 10th episode of season 1. And this was the episode that Antwan came back for.
Do we want to explain the story about why Antwan
Oh, yes, we definitely should.
was out of the mix?
Antwan, he always say that, he grew up and didn't have the best of things. And when he went to prison, there was an opportunity for him to wear some of the flyest clothes.
And he tailored them himself?
He tailored some of them himself, made like little shirts. He used to be in there with the tennis shoes that he done painted on, and he ended up going to the hole.
And the initial issue was that you're not supposed to alter state clothing. Is that right?
Yes. And then when they just locked him up and went to his bunk area, they discovered like a locker full of like unauthorized clothing. So they was like, wait a minute, are you trying to escape?
Mm-hmm.
But he was just trying to be fly. He was being himself, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was on a picture.
That's the story I remember. The San Quentin News ran a story about Ear Hustle being chosen by PRX in that competition. And it featured a picture of Julie and Curtis and you and Nigel and Antwan. And Antwan had on one of his sharp cardigans. And
with the blue prison shirt up under it.
Somebody saw it and they're like, wait, is this an incarcerated person?
Yeah, that was hilarious. And I think it was on the front page of the San Quentin News, too.
Mm-hmm. Why did you want to listen back to this episode?
Because this right here was one of those stories that everybody dream of when they're in prison. And I'm going to say everybody because everybody escapes that place. Mm-hmm. But this was a guy that actually followed his dreams. Mm-hmm. We're going to hear his story. We're going to hear one of the deepest questions Nigel has ever asked anyone. And I want y'all to pick it up. I ain't going to say what it is.
Okay. So this dropped. It was the 10th and final episode of the first season, dropped in October 2017. What were things like for you in October 2017?
October of 2017, I was just jailing, just doing time, you know what I'm saying, and enjoying accomplishing a whole season with PRX and Radiotopia.
But it must have been a different place than it had been 6 months earlier.
No, it was so... when you were in a confined environment, for me, I used to always clown other podcast shows. I used to be like, y'all got to go take the trash out, take the kids to daycare, go here, go there, get on the freeway, deal with traffic. I was like, we right here. We have none of that. We just stick to the stories. This is all we got to do is just sit in here and work on stories. So it was fun work. It was rewarding, and a lot of people got what we was doing. We were talking about the everyday existence inside prison. And that's it.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to listen to the first segment. We're going to come back, talk a little bit about it, listen to the second part, come back at the end and do a wrap-up. Ear Hustle episode 10.
Getting a Date.
Följande podcast innehåller språk som kan anses olämpligt för vissa lyssnare. The following podcast contains language that may not be appropriate for all listeners.
You're now tuned in to San Quentin's Ear Hustle from PRX's Radiotopia.
Hey, E, tell everyone how you heard about this story. You really ear hustled this one.
I think it was back like in January. I was in a chow hall and I'm waiting in line for dinner, and there was a couple of dudes behind me, and one was telling the other guy about this 115 he got.
A 115 is a rule violation.
Right. Except this wasn't about contraband or a fight. This was about an actual escape. So it got a little interesting, right? I'm hustling this one.
I'm sure you are.
So I did one of those, I'm not listening to what you're saying things and turn around just so I can really identify the guy. And later, I saw him on a yard, and he was in front of the area where the white guys kick it. And he's an older guy, but he was busting down, doing burpees, getting his money, right?
Nice.
So I waited for him to finish his set, and then I walked over to him, and I'm like, excuse me, sir, my name is Earlonne. Can I holler at you for a second? And we started talking, and I told him about the podcast, and I was like, look, man, I was in line the other day, and it was you and another guy, and you was telling him about a 115 you had, and it was a very interesting story. Mm-hmm. And I would hope that you can come down to the studio so we can talk about it. And he was like, no. I'm Earlonne Woods, a prisoner at San Quentin State Prison in California.
I'm Nigel Poor, a visual artist who works with incarcerated men at San Quentin.
And together, we're going to take you inside.
I've been denied 3 times. This is my 4th parole hearing coming up now.
Steve Wilson has been in prison on and off for about 30 years.
He didn't want to talk to us at first because he had that parole hearing coming up. He didn't want to say something that might be used against him.
Which is smart, because if your parole hearing is successful, you get a date. It's what everyone wants, a date to get out of prison. And that's what we're talking about on this episode, what it takes to get out of prison.
So, Earlonne, Steve Wilson didn't want to talk to us. Mm-mm. This was way back before we even did our first episode. So maybe he didn't know what we were talking about. And honestly, we didn't even know what we were doing.
Maybe. I mean, I explained it to him. I'm like, hey, man, we'll hold this story off until after your parole hearing. And after talking to him like that, he agreed to holler at us.
I thought I had a good chance at parole the last time. I had a low risk of recidivism. I had over 20 years of clean time with no write-ups. I had no violence in my history except my commitment offense in 1979.
Commitment offense. That's the crime that put him in prison in the first place.
In 1979, Steve Wilson murdered his father-in-law on a ranch in California. It was a complicated domestic dispute that we're not going to get into here. But basically, Steve's wife left him and he went to her father's ranch to get her back. But his father-in-law wouldn't allow him on the ranch. So long story short, Steve kidnapped his father-in-law and ended up killing him, shooting him twice, I believe.
It's been almost 40 years since that murder, and Steve's now 73 years old. But it's not just his crime that's keeping him in prison.
Every time I go to the board, there's always this one rule violation at 115 that I got about 30 years ago. And every time I go to the board, they bring it up.
I bet they do. We're going to hear more about that rule violation. But first, here's what's waiting for Steve when he goes to the board. This is Danny Plunkett, who has been incarcerated for 27 years for murder and robbery.
You have to go in there. You have to be accountable for your actions prior to the commitment offense, and after the commitment offense. And you sit down in front of the commissioner, deputy commissioner, who hold your life in their hands.
Danny just went to the board, so the memory is fresh.
You go to your first parole hearing here at San Quentin. You go in the same direction that you would go to a visit. You've gone that way many times, but this is a whole new experience. Emotions, nerves are just raw. And you've got your packet under your arm, all your stuff, support letters, parole plans, relapse prevention plan, maybe a couple book reports, an essay that you've written. And as you're headed to where the visiting is, you make a left. And you have to stand there and wait for an officer to come get you. He takes you through a gate. You go up a short flight of stairs, and there's a holding cell. There's a wooden bench, and you sit on that bench.
I can honestly remember sitting in the holding cell, waiting for them to call me to go to the board.
Phil Melendez was on a recent episode about unwritten rules of race. He's been incarcerated for 20 years for a double murder. He also just went to the board.
And, they call you, they say, hey, Mr. Melendez, they're ready for you. And I remember my heart sinking, the butterflies times 1,000,000. I felt like there was maybe 1 billion butterflies in my stomach. I felt like electric, like my whole body was like flowing with energy, but nervous energy, not such a good energy.
If you're lucky and you get a date at the hearing, those butterflies don't necessarily go away. Ron Self was on our first episode talking about the cellie from hell. He's served 23 years for attempted murder. He actually got a date recently, and he's scheduled to be released soon, but...
They have up to 120 days to review it, and it's Cockroach Motel, easy to get in, hard to get out. That's kind of how I look at it. It's a slow process getting out.
It's slow because your date goes through a review process, and as Ron knows, they can take your date away from you at any time.
So there's this euphoric feeling. I mean, it's like, wow, I'm really found suitable. This is not my reality, what's about to come happen. And so then another type of stress starts to set in. It's like, am I going to somehow get the date taken away like other people have? I think it's worse stress.
Why?
Because you don't know. You think you're literally walking on rice paper. If you were walking on eggshells before, you're walking on rice paper now. It's anything can cause it to go sideways.
Waiting. Prison is all about waiting. And then when something finally happens, goes your way, you get a date, you still gotta wait.
Stephen is the correct spelling. Steve for short.
Steve's been waiting a long time, and you can see why he's anxious about his parole hearing.
Yep, it's that rule violation. The parole board is going to know all about it, and it's a big one. We're going to hear about that right now, and we're also going to check back in with the other guys to see how they fared with the board.
After he murdered his father-in-law, Steve Wilson was sentenced to 25 years to life, and he started serving his time at California's second most famous prison.
I arrived at Old Folsom in October of 1982, and after I established myself and felt comfortable, I began making plans to escape.
He started with research. In the prison library, Steve found some books about escape attempts from Old Folsom.
There had been dozens and dozens of attempts to escape out of Old Folsom that had never been successful.
Steve said that he thought these books were in the library to show guys how impossible it was to escape.
But Steve learned something very important from these failed attempts.
They failed because somebody told. Whenever there was more than one person, somebody chickened out. And I had those same emotions at the end myself. Am I going to do this or am I not? And the one way to chicken out is you drop a kite on yourself and say, there's this escape attempt. And everybody gets busted. And that's what I read in the books. My fail-safe method was don't tell anyone.
Steve was working in an industrial warehouse in the prison, and that's where he saw his opportunity.
They received a gigantic exhaust fan, the type that goes on top of a building.
Weighed about 1,400 pounds.
The fan was there for repairs, which meant that eventually it was going to get shipped out.
And the more I looked at this fan, the more I realized this was be the way to go.
There was an 18-inch opening underneath the fan. With practice, Steve found that he could squeeze inside it and not be seen.
From that point on, I just focused on getting enough money hidden away and waiting my opportunity. Over this period of time, I had accumulated $2,000. My dad would visit me. He had $100 bills rolled up inside of balloons, so tight they're about the size of pills. My dad would just drop them out of his hand into the soda can, and I would drink them, swallow them, wait until the next day and fish them.
Ugh.
Yep. But now he had money and a plan. Then one day, his boss told him that the fan was getting ready to ship. So when no one was looking, Steve crawled inside.
I can remember very distinctly, August 2nd, 1984. It was already hot. And I'm in this fan. I'm set down in the middle of the floor, and there's 2 or 3 officers and free staff walking around. And one of them, my boss, comes over, and he's standing next to the fan, and he tells the guys, he says, okay, load the fan now. And so my heart's, beating so loud, I'm thinking that they've got to hear it because this is a scary situation, and I'm sweating profusely. Drops of sweat are falling off my head and hitting the cardboard. And to me, it sounds like somebody's thump, thump, thump. And so I'm thinking, I'm sure they can hear that out there.
But they didn't hear him, and the fan was loaded into the trailer of the truck. The truck left the prison, and Steve was out. But this was just the beginning of his escape.
Yeah, we interviewed him for about 2 hours, and he remembers everything that happened that day, like when he realized he was locked inside the trailer.
This is where I made my mistake in my planning.
It took him a while to find a way out.
I'm sitting there, and there's these little pinpricks of light coming down from the roof in the trailer, and little dust motes floating around. And I'm thinking, where in the world is that coming from? And I look up at the ceiling, and there's all this duct tape.
He pulled the duct tape down and popped out.
Then he hitched a ride, and the trucker who gave him a ride was pulled over by the highway patrol because he had skipped a way station.
But Steve kept his cool, and he made it to San Jose, where he bought food and clothing.
I would imagine it was to be about 12 o'clock by now, and I was starting to feel paranoia and thinking that every little airplane that flew over, every car was looking for me. And so I found a big clump of bushes, and I curled up in the bushes and took a little nap.
He got up into the mountains, and it took him weeks, but he walked, and I mean he walked almost 500 miles all the way to the town of Ramona, just north of San Diego.
Steve's originally from Florida, but he lived in the San Diego area when he was in the service. He hadn't told anyone in the prison about his plans, but he had told his mom and dad.
They came and visited me, and they said they hadn't been notified that I had escaped, other than the fact that, I told them I was going to. So Mom gave me some more money. We said our goodbyes. I said, I don't know when the next time I'll see you. They left. I'm kind of afraid to be moving around because this is, considered my hometown, and obviously the cops should have been notified.
Steve bought a car, and he started driving. He made it to El Paso on the first day and then kept going.
When I got to Austin, I saw builder's cranes for high-rise construction. And when I saw those, I knew that I'd get a job, and I knew I wasn't going to go any further.
Steve Wilson became one of few men to successfully escape from Old Folsom State Prison. He was out of prison, but he wasn't really free. The authorities were after him, and he knew they weren't going to stop looking for him, ever.
Yeah, and he wouldn't be able to see his mom and dad again. He couldn't hang out with old friends, and he was definitely going to have to assume other names along the way, and he'd always be looking over his shoulder. I mean, he wasn't going to have a normal life.
Nah, that's just it. If you escape and you don't get killed trying to do so, you're not going to get what all of us want, a chance at a normal life. And that's something that a lot of us behind bars fantasize about, getting out and leading a normal life.
What are some of the things you think about when you fantasize about your life when you're out?
Off the top of my head, it's unrealistic, but I think about just getting out of San Quentin, jumping in the water, and swimming to my yacht and going around the world.
Nice. We asked some other guys in our story what they fantasize about, and they're not quite as ambitious as you, E. Here's Phillip.
My idea of freedom in its most simplest and most beautiful form is me sitting on the couch with the wife on one side, the kids on the other side, and we're all just sitting there, probably haven't came back just from getting ice cream and watching a never-ending story.
I kind of like that movie, too. Here's what Ron's been fantasizing about.
I look forward to falling in love and just holding that person. And I don't even mean in a sexual way, just to feel that person, the warmth of that person. I look forward to that. And on the lighter side, I want to get a dog.
We're going to take a break here, and when we get back, we're going to hear what kind of life Steve led as an escaped felon.
All right. What'd you think?
Man, every voice we've heard so far is free. from the listener alert, which is David Jassy, to every other person in there.
Yeah, and I know Ron Self, who we heard from a few times, he runs programs inside now, right?
He runs a veterans program. He's doing very well. Phil Melendez, he goes back into the prisons doing very well. Man, everybody is doing damn good.
I love that it has the classic, I think of it as a Curtis Fox move, where you sort of tell enough of the main story, and then they're like, but we're going to come back to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to
it. I can't imagine with all the books that they don't allow in prison, they have a book in there about how to escape from the prison you're in.
Not just a book, a few books.
A few books, that's right. I wonder if they still have those books. We're due to go up to Folsom soon.
Oh, well, we need to go to the library.
Let's go to the library.
Let's go to the library and check.
Maybe after they heard this, they took it out.
Maybe, or they might got one in there on him.
I guess CDCR didn't have any hesitations about us releasing this episode with an explanation of an escape?
Nah, it happened.
Maybe they don't have those fans anymore. Yeah, right.
It's documented.
Anything else you heard in the first half? Any edits, any notes?
Yes, a lot. I was talking fast, and I probably sounded a little reedy in some areas. You know, sound design was a little dense, back to back, different size.
I like the sound design when he's telling the story of getting out. I thought that was really good.
Suspenseful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And composed for the moment, you could tell. And speaking of people who are out, there are a couple pieces of nice just solo guitar in there.
Yeah.
Not in the escape part, but that must be Phil Phillips, who just got out within the last year or two.
Yeah, he just got out. I just talked to him the other day.
Yeah. I noticed we mentioned Everybody's Crime, and I can't remember if we were just doing that as a practice in the first season, or if we were talking about these guys paroled. Was it
I think it was
relevant?
more. I think it was more of the parole. And I think it could have been germane to this based on they were going to the board and why they were going to the board.
Maybe that's why, because we did go into Steve's crime in detail, but maybe that's because it was sort of in the frame of the parole. Although it's interesting that the main story doesn't really have that much to do with parole. Sort of like you slide an escape story into an episode about parole.
Or slide parole into an episode about escape.
Right. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll come back, listen to the second part.
Yep.
Being on escape, probably the first thing you wake up with and go to bed with every night is, wow, I made it through another day. But there becomes a point in time and where you start to feel comfortable.
After his escape from Old Folsom, Steve made his way to Austin. He found work there and met his future wife.
This really nice lady, we got along really well. And after a year or so, we moved from Texas back down to my home in Florida. And I told her who I was. And we bought a piece of ground. We bought an acre in a gated community on a lake, and I built a house. I had built a new family with her and her son, who I was with and raised from the time he was 2 until he was almost 11. And her family that adopted me as one of them.
Sounds kind of like a normal life. Not really.
I've always realized when I escaped that, it's only going to last so long. There will be an end. And so I kind of burnt my candle at both ends.
It lasted for years. Steve ran a small maintenance and construction company. He traveled and he fit in with his community. Now, it sounds kind of normal, right?
And every week we went shopping in town.
Not really.
I picked up the TV guide one time as we were in the checkout lane, and I looked for America's Most Wanted. I think it was playing on Sunday nights then. And the first thing I saw was my name, Steve Wilson, will be featured. My heart stopped.
So TV Guide and America's Most Wanted tipped off the fugitive Steve Wilson.
Steve immediately went on the run again. He moved to Australia, then to England, where he convinced his wife to join him.
I've got my British citizenship, I've got my Australian citizenship, and I figured out how to bring you over here and make you a citizen too. And she says, okay. I said, the next thing I need you to do is to empty out my account, which she had her name on. And I said, bring me my money. I said, just make sure you don't take more than $10,000 at a time. Take less.
Either she didn't listen to him, or she didn't think it was important because she ended up taking out more than $10,000.
In one withdrawal.
And that was the problem.
The FBI was monitoring that account. They tipped off Scotland Yard, and she was followed from the moment she got off that plane.
Yep.
When she met up with Steve at the hotel in London, he got arrested.
Immediately.
Well, I escaped on August 2nd, 1984. 8 years later, in 1992, I was returned to New Folsom and put in the hole.
So that's Steve's 115. That's the rule violation that will come up at his parole hearing, and he'll have to answer for that yet again.
Yep, and he's also going to have to talk about his life before he murdered his father-in-law. He'll have to talk about the murder itself. And he'll also have to talk about what he's been doing since he's been back in prison after his escape.
Yeah, guys have to explain what sort of work they've been doing to understand themselves, to change. There's a whole bunch of vocabulary for this inside of prison.
Yeah, you guys talk about like insight and accountability all the time.
And some guys really do take it on, but some guys don't. And the board is going to be listening and looking hard to determine what's really going on inside.
What do I think my chances are at parole? I think that I've prepared myself. I've done some deep study and some research into myself, and I understand what it was and the way my belief system was that allowed me to take such a drastic step. I do courses over and over again. I do AA, NA, and been doing it for over 10 years. Even though I have gotten everything from it that I can get, I mean, I live it every day. I ask myself every day a question. I question myself, and I say, you know, have I addressed my defects? Am I trying to control anybody? Am I trying to take advantage? And then I also ask myself, have I done anything positive today?
For myself, I would say I did a lot of writing.
This is Danny Plunkett again. He's been involved with restorative justice programs, which is about dialogue between victims and offenders. Here's how he prepared to face the board.
I would just write. I would write about the crime. I would write about who I was leading up to the crime. And also a lot of victim empathy exercises, just trying to write on what it must have been like for them and trying to imagine maybe what it's been like for them since the crime, since the trial. That kind of stuff.
At Danny's parole hearing, he faced a commissioner and a deputy commissioner.
So we walk into the room, and there's directly in front of me, there's two seats. The farthest one, my lawyer is sitting in, and then the one that I'm going to sit in. And there's two tables, and on the left, and that's where the commissioner and the deputy commissioner. And then the back of the room is just a line of people. And I can't look. I can't look at them.
That row of people behind Danny, they're called VNOCs, Victims Next of Kin, and Danny was not allowed to look at them. He couldn't acknowledge their presence in any way.
Danny can't address anyone except the commissioners.
At Danny's hearing, the victims' representatives got a chance to speak.
And I got to hear a little of the young man that I murdered's life before. And then I got to hear from the victims, two victims who were at the crime, and hear their experiences. And I got it. I got it all. I got to hear the family's history, you know, hear my victim's life growing up in great detail. And, you know, that's really restorative justice, except for the fact that I couldn't look at them. They had family pictures. I couldn't look. And it was really tough not to look. But I got to hear the pain and the heartache and the loss, you know. The empty stocking at Christmas, the empty chair at Thanksgiving. It was a very powerful experience, and I'm very grateful for that.
Guys find out pretty quick if they're getting a date, often within minutes after the hearing. Danny did not get a date.
I struggle with whether or not I deserve to get out of prison because of the harm that I've caused and the life I took that can't be returned and relived. I want out. There's a lot of things I want to do. But on the other hand, I have a pretty good life in here. At San Quentin, I've been able to find me for the first time in my life, somebody that I'm proud of. I have a rich, rewarding life with so many programs and relationships, with people, and even some people locally who, I've met since I've been here that come to visit. And outside volunteers, there's so many outside volunteers. So I have a rich life in here. I really look forward to having a rich life out of here.
Danny will have another chance before the board in 3 years. Here's what happened at Phillip's hearing. And just a reminder, Phillip has been in prison for 20 years for a double murder he committed when he was 19 years old.
One of the things that they said, Mr. Melendez, they said that, there's no getting around the crime. It's a horrendous crime, and it is. And I agreed wholeheartedly when he said that, and I agree with it now to this day. But when they talked about suitability factors, they said that you have done a lot of work. You've done a lot of work on yourself. You have insight. And one of the things that I did they said, was you didn't minimize anything, which means that, when it came to every part of my negative behavior, I owned it and was able to trace it back to my childhood, and that's the insight too.
Phillip's hearing lasted about 3.5 hours.
And, you done talked about all your traumas, and it's painful, it's sad, it hurts. And then you have to wait. And those 15 or 20 minutes just seem like forever. And they come and get you and they say, all right, let's reconvene. Sure enough, they walked me in there. They said, Mr. Melendez, we find you suitable for parole. And, you feel the weight of the world come off your chest.
Do you think you deserve to get out?
I don't know. I don't know about deserving. Deserving, that's a hard word to really stomach. Just based on my accountability, just based on my understanding of my victims' impact, or the impact I had on my victims' lives, I couldn't really say I ever deserve anything, right? Do I want to get out? Absolutely. Do I have a family? Do I have a community that I want to fix and that I want to restore? Yes, absolutely. And for them and for the community, I would like to see myself out. I would like to see myself out, but I don't think I could ever say that I deserve to be out.
The reaction inside of San Quentin to Phillip getting his date has been mixed. He says most of his fellow prisoners have been supportive, but he's heard complaints.
One of the worst ones I've heard was like, oh, I can't believe that MFer got a date. He killed 2 people. And then the only comfort that guy could get is just keep thinking out loud. This is what somebody told me. He kept thinking about it. It's like, well, at least the governor will take his date.
But that didn't happen. In September, Phil Melendez got out of prison and he's living in Northern California.
Maybe he's already had a chance to watch The Never-Ending Story on the couch with his wife and kids.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to catch that movie on my yacht.
I used to tell myself, I can't wait to get away from these freaking turds.
Ron Self is still waiting for his date to arrive.
And now it's looking like that's going to happen. I'm finding myself realizing I'm going to miss a lot of these people, especially the veterans.
Before he came to prison for attempted murder, Ron was in the military.
I feel like I'm a little emotional. I feel like I'm leaving them behind. And I don't like that. That bothers me. And it surprises me because I didn't think that would bother me.
Here's the latest on Ron. After he got his date, he had to wait months to see if it would pass review. Just last Friday, he was called to go see his counselor.
I almost threw up. I could feel it in my throat. It was just like, holy shit. But I get there and the counselor comes running out and he's like, yeah, the governor reviewed your case today and he took no action. I'm like, cool. So when am I getting out? Like, I don't know. He says, I don't know. But you got to sign these papers.
On October 19, 2017, after 23 years in prison, Ron Self walked free. But I think he's coming back to prison, though.
What? You think he's coming back here for sure?
I do.
Well, you actually are right, because he founded a program, Veterans Healing Veterans, and he's going to be visiting veterans in prisons across the state.
Okay, how you doing today?
I'm a little tired, but I'm healthy.
Back to Steve Wilson and his board hearing. We interviewed him before the hearing and after. It didn't go well for him.
My feelings on that, I was hurt. I really expected to get a date.
He was philosophical about it, though.
It seems that the older that I get, the more I'm kind of living in my memories. I can go any place I want. I can do anything I want. I can relive all my experiences as long as I don't lose my memory. And that is a freedom. They can lock the body up until it dies, but they can't lock the mind up.
Thanks to Steve Wilson for sharing his story with us.
And also big thanks to Danny Plunkett, Phillip Melendez, and Ron Self for telling us about their experience with the parole board.
Sound design on this episode was a group effort, with music contributed by Antwan Williams, David Jassy, Phil Phillips, and Earlonne Woods, myself. Pat Mesiti-Miller is our outside production advisor. Our story editor is Curtis Fox, and our executive producer for Radiotopia is Julie Shapiro.
We also want to thank Warden Ron Davis and Larry Schneider, who runs the media lab we work in. And as you know, every episode has to be approved by this guy here.
I am Lieutenant Sam Robinson, the Public Information Officer at San Quentin State Prison, and I approve this story. The final episode of Season 1. I'm really looking forward to hearing, well, maybe I am. I'm not really sure because there's been a lot of work this season. But given that we move forward with Season 2, I'm really looking forward to see what new stories develop out of Ear Hustle.
It feels so weird to not say next time on Ear Hustle. I'm not ready for this.
Me either. But don't get too down, Nige, because we got plans to drop a few surprises in the feed leading up to next season.
And we've heard from so many listeners about the original music we use in our episodes, and we're going to dig into that and share some of those songs in full.
And maybe we might do a Q&A episode or something.
Right. You know, we've been getting so many kites. I've got so many to go through. And I want to give a shout out to Jefferson County Public Schools and the more traditional schools specifically, because they have a teacher there that did a project with her class, and we got like 62 kites in one day.
So keep those kites coming and let us know what you want to hear.
Okay, I know we can't get specific about what we're working on for next season, but what's one story you want to do?
Ministering on death row.
Ooh, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, that's a deep one. Do you think we're going to get on death row this year?
That's the big question, is if we're going to get up there.
What about you, Nige?
For sure, I want to do a story about L7s, nerds, and fantasy games inside.
Let's just say we got a shitload of work to do over the break, so please stay tuned. Nige will be posting on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and you might find her out there talking about Ear Hustle.
Over the break, I'll continue updating the website, earhustlesq.com. Check out the gallery for new images. And also, we get so many questions about writing to guys inside. Please go to the FAQ section on the website to find out how to do that.
People love mail, and not just the guys at San Quentin.
Thanks to everyone who's listened over the season and supported us in so many ways. You know what I always say to Lieutenant Robinson when I talk about Ear Hustle?
No, what?
The reality of Ear Hustle is bigger than the dream we had when we started.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's deep.
It is. And we've been supported by so many people.
Yeah, we had over 5 million downloads this season.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
She got all emotional and shit.
Okay.
That's what's up.
Okay.
Can't be seen crying in prison, woman.
Absolutely not. So, again, thanks to everyone who cared enough to listen. I'm Nigel Poor.
And thanks to the entire San Quentin community. I'm Earlonne Woods. Thanks for listening.
Slow fade. No Easter egg. It's interesting. It's like a historical artifact, those credits.
That is, one of the things came out of those credits that became a slogan was the reality is bigger than the dream, and that was for real. That was from the gate. And then I think when we said that, someone sent us in a watercolor little art piece about it. But yeah, man. And you know what? I've been wondering what's up with Steve Wilson.
I was about to ask,
Because I used to talk to him for a minute, but then I think he moved states. He probably moved back to Florida.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
So he did eventually get out.
He got out. I think he got out during COVID. But when I used to go in, I used to always bounce up in there and holler at him. You know what I'm saying? And we chop it up for a minute. But he was still a cool dude. And that meant one thing I could say about him, he did burpees all the way till I remember. You know what I'm saying? In his 70s, he was out there doing burpees. And I pushed up on him. He was doing burpees. You know what I'm saying? That was a deep one. And then, like I say, this was one of the most interesting questions Nigel had done to that far when she asked the person, did he deserve to be out?
Do you remember what you asked that?
Yeah, I remember. I was like, huh? You know what I'm saying?
Question. And
it was a good question.
He thinks about it deeply.
Yeah, he thought deeply on it, and he's I don't deserve nothing, Would I like to be? Yes. So, listening to this episode, it did, bring back a lot of thoughts from that time.
Yeah, I was wondering, so this came out October 2017, at which point your first parole date would have still been like a decade away, right?
It'll be November 2028.
More than a decade.
Yeah,
so 11 years.
Decade, yeah.
What was it like to be in there talking about other people going up for parole and yours was so far in the future?
It's a trip. And the one thing I can say about having a life sentence is you kind of compartmentalize certain things. You know what I'm saying? Like it don't affect you because your mind already know that you don't have a date. And I think what Phil was saying, like when he said people were hating on him because you had 3 strikers, people that are in jail for some petty shit that they looking like, bruh, you got a double murder. How you going home and I only robbed somebody and I ain't going to the board for 50 more years. But, different strokes for different folks,
And don't be bitter at Phil. Be bitter at
Phil. Be bitter at the system.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Any lessons we should take from this episode for the work we're doing now?
Just keep ear hustling, man.
Yeah, keep listening.
Keep listening in. You're going to hear it.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Radiotopia from P.